Okay, so when I went to my storage unit today, I got this short box of comics. So I'm gonna go through here real quick and we're gonna see what I got. Okay, I wasn't really paying too much attention to what I grabbed. I just grabbed something random. And let's see, we got On My Commie Girls. That was a pretty fun series. I remember I bought that around the time that the new 52 had just come out, and I didn't really like the new 52. So I was just kind of looking for whatever kind of DC comics I could actually stand to read, and that was actually a pretty good series. Uh, got Swamp Thing. I think most of my Alan Moore run of Swamp Thing is in here, which I don't have a complete run. There's still a lot of issues that I need to get, but there are a lot of really cool issues in here. That was one of my favorite covers. This is the Boogeyman issue of Swamp Thing, which, if you're a fan of Sandman and you remember the Serial Convention story, this was the inspiration for that story. They actually mentioned serial conventions in this story, and if you recall in that story, the character that claimed to be the boogeyman is the villain in this story. Well, he's the protagonist. He's a villain, and a lot of people speculate that are fans of Sandman, but they haven't read Swamp Thing. They like to speculate that the reason the Corinthian knows that it's not the real boogeyman and that the real boogeyman is dead is because the Corinthian killed the boogeyman. Nope. You got to read this issue, man. This will really killed the boogeyman. What really happened? I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I mean, it's a Swamp Thing comic. You do the math. Lots of cool covers on this run. It was such a great run. This is an early John Constantine appearance. He's in a few of these. I don't think I have his actual first appearance. I could be mistaken. I haven't been through these in a while, but one of my favorite runs of any comic of all time. That's another great cover. I love that cover. And of course, being such a huge Batman fan, I love the fight between Batman and Swamp Thing in in that comic. That's another good cover. All these covers are pretty great. And then that's when Lex Luthor hits Swampy with that device that basically like banishes from the earth. So he's hopping from planet to planet. Swamp Thing. He's a red cactus. There's the Patchwork Man, and this was a weird one because this was more of like a prose piece that was illustrated, very experimental. This was the first one that was done in this new format. All the previous issues were done in newsprint, regular newsprint comics, but the new format was like Baxter paper, a little more expensive, a little more fancy. Here's where God, I forget the name of that Green Lantern, but the one whose head looks like broccoli, and he's got one eyeball. Yeah, that's the issue where Swamp Thing meets him. He's the Green Lantern ring on his finger. So he goes to a planet where all of the plant life is sentient, and it's driving him insane because he's used to possessing plant life here on Earth or other planets where plant life isn't necessarily sentient, but there it's like just driving him nuts. Another cool cover. This whole run was pretty wild with him going into space and everything. So, but he finally makes it back. Finally makes it back to Abby, and that's the end of the story. There's more Swamp Thing after that. Like Rick Veitch does some stuff, and I think Rachel Pollack does a run on Swamp Thing for a while. She passed away not long ago, but for a while there, it seemed like she was writing like got half the Vertigo line, right? There's an old World's Finest. This is one of the Super Sons issues, as you can see, with Superman berating Batman Jr. and Superman Jr. over there with Batman Sr. being like, I'm glad I'm not his son. Oh. So, yeah, I love those 100-page stories. I got a lot of these 100-page issues Like when I was a kid, I'd find them for cheap at the comic book store when I would go through the back issues, and it was how I got exposed to a lot of Golden and Silver Age DC stories for the first time. Here we got some Bronze Age Superman and Bronze Age Captain America. Looks like a John Byrne cover. This is the Phantom Zone miniseries. I think I have the rest of it somewhere, but it looks like that's just issue number 3. Uh, Superman plunging into the past, Superboy flying into the future, and both headed for senses shattering smash up. So I haven't read that one in a while, but I bet it's pretty cool. Here's that weird creature. He's using heat vision like you're Superman. It is mine, Lana. He's stolen my eyes. I wonder if this is the one. You've probably seen the page, the panel online a few times, where it's that Kurt Swan Superman panel where his eyeball is just growing gigantic. I wonder if that's this issue, because it seems like it would be, right? Since that guy has like a huge Superman head or a huge eyeball for his head. I mean, I have no eyes. No, he just kind of zapped him out of his head. Not too bad. That would have been cool to see. Look, there's an ad for the Superman the movie magazine. That's more super. That looks like a Joe Kubert illustrated piece. That probably came from his school. So I know they were doing a lot of advertisements and things back then. So got a Legion of Superheroes. DC Comics presents Superman and the Legion of Superheroes. But they're used to teaming up with him when he's Superboy, not when he's Superman. So that's got to be interesting for them. And then I got a trade paperback in here of some kind. Let me get those issues back in there and we'll see what it is. Oh, I think I know what this is. Oh, it's The Crow. Yeah, that's a great comic. So I should probably read this again sometime soon. I've been wanting to go back and read The Crow again for a while. So I think I'm gonna set that aside. I'm gonna read that. So let's see what else we got. Oh, here's a good one. It's the Wonder Woman Spectacular. This is a pretty infamous comic because of some of the interior Paradise Island stuff. You read it, you know what I'm talking about. A little controversial. Steve Ditko did some pages on the inside, but interestingly, he doesn't do much with Wonder Woman. He does mostly stuff with like the Greek gods and things like that. I think there's one panel where you see a chess piece in the form of Wonder Woman, but he doesn't draw much of the Wonder Woman action. So here's some more DC Comics presents. This is Superman and Clark Kent. And if I can peel this loose, oh, this is a doozy right here. Check it out. That is the first appearance of Mongul. So that is a choice book right there with the first appearance of Mongul. This one's worth a pretty penny. So it's not in the best of shape. You can see that there's like some creases in the corner and things like that, but still, first appearance of Mongul. That's pretty freaking cool, huh? And then we got some Zorro. This was the Marvel Comics series that was based on the Family Channel Zorro. And here's one with a really nice Alex Toth cover. And he might have done the interiors on this as well. I think that he did the interiors on some of those Zorro comics. So that's pretty cool. Got a little more Bronze Age Superman here. Got this is the retelling of The Origin of Lex Luthor by my personal favorite Superman writer, Elliot S. Maggin. And it basically just retells the Silver Age story of Lex Luthor's origin, but it adds a little more to it, and I think gives the character a little more nuance and pathos than he had in that original story. And then here's an issue with the Parasite on it, but it just shows Superman getting beat up by a little kid, and just the Parasite's just a tiny little head up there in the corner for whatever reason. I don't know why they didn't play the Parasite up a little more. Here's another great cover with a lot of great Superman villains. We got Terra Man and Brainiac, Bizarro, the Toy Man, and Metallo. And then uh, five super foes behind him and before him, the most shocking super foe of all. Who could that be? I wonder. And we got it's horrible that monster has turned Superman into a real Man of Steel. And with him gone, Lois, who could possibly save us now? I don't know, Supergirl, Crypto, Batman. You got a bunch of superheroes. Green Lantern might come by, Flash, I don't know. This is an issue that is very popular among people who are transgender. I know a lot of people who are transgender who really like this story because it's the characters getting swapped around in the terms of their genders. So instead of Superman, Supergirl, and Wonder Woman on this world, there's a Superwoman, a Superboy, and a Wonder Warrior. How about that? And I'm not going to spoil this issue for you and let you know why that is, but there's a lot more characters in there like Batwoman and Black Condor instead of Black Canary, and like Leslie Luthor, I think she's called, Lois Lane, Jenny Olsen. It's a fun issue. Here we go. There's another Bronze Age Superman. Here's one with a Gil Kane cover. How can I strike back against my own brother? I don't remember this story, so I don't. This is a great cover here. This looks like Eduardo Barreto, I think. Yeah, that's Eduardo Barreto. I can see his signature now. But Superman basically just being a bum. So I'm sure there's an interesting story behind that. Here's the infamous Radio Shack free comic with the Tandy Computer TRS-80 Whiz Kids. So they went on to be in some of their own giveaway Radio Shack comics without Superman, but I didn't like those as much because they didn't have Superman. Here is OMAC. That's issue number 8 of OMAC. That's one of the later issues. Has a Joe Kubert cover. It's kind of strange choice to have Joe Kubert do the cover of a Jack Kirby comic, since their styles are so different. I mean, both men are fantastic artists in their own right, but their styles are just completely different. So here's the Earth One Insect Queen. I don't remember if she's Lana Lang or not. So it's a Superman family. I like to get Superman family because, like, at least at one time you were able to get those pretty easily for cheap. Here's a comic that's got a little bit of damage to it right here. A couple of Action Comics. A lot of Bronze Age Superman stuff in here. Oh, this was a fun story here where Lex Luthor meets a woman who is also bald because of some kind of weird disease, and he falls in love with her, and decides to turn over a new leaf because he's gonna marry this bald chick, and you can see what happens here. So that was I don't want to spoil that story, but you should read that story. It's a good one, and it's one where it's like, oh man, Lex Luthor, man, why do you do this kind of stuff to yourself? Lex Luthor is brilliant and rich, and he could have the best life that you could possibly imagine if he just weren't so hung up on hating Superman. What is your deal, Lex? Come on. So here's another good story. This is where Jonathan Kent returns from the dead. Remember, back in the Bronze Age, before John Byrne revamped Superman, the Kents had died in the his late teenage years. So Jonathan Kent shows up alive, and Superman, he said, "Thunderation! Who could have done that to my son? Your son? That means Superman is Clark Kent." Is this the second part of the story, or the first part? I don't remember. But yeah, so it's a two-part story, and it's a good one. I like it. Here's one with Vandal Savage that was pretty interesting. Up to this point, Vandal Savage had always been like a Golden Age villain, and he fought like Green Lantern and Hawkman and Flash. characters like, when I say Green Lantern and Flash, I mean, of course, Alan Scott and Jay Garrick, and he was one of the major enemies of the Justice Society. But this was one of the first times that he fought an Earth One villain without it being an Earth Two, or I'm sorry, he fought an Earth Two hero without it being a team up with an why can't I talk right now? Okay, so this was one of the first times that Vandal Savage fought an Earth One hero without it being a team up with an Earth One villain, and of course it's got to be Super because he's the greatest of all superheroes. So it looks like both of these have backups of the Atom. This one has a backup of Airwave. That's one of the later Superman villains, Neutron. He kind of disappeared after the revamp. There's a really nice Jose Luis Garcia Lopez cover. And this was another cover that, was kind of one of those clickbait kind of covers. I remember picking this one up when I was a kid just because I'm like, what is the deal with SX? What's that? And this cover was by Eduardo Barreto, and the interiors were by Kurt Swan. And I'm going to go ahead take this out of the package. Let's enjoy the view of my ceiling while I open up this comic book. All right. So this is one of those things where I'm pretty sure that the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing when drawing this comic book, because when we see what the replacement Superman looks like in the actual comic, it's nothing like what he looked like on the cover at all. Not even a little bit. So, but basically, as I recall, this adventure had to do with these aliens needed Superman's help, and we implore you, Superman, allow us to teleport you across the galaxy to our home world while our race still breathes. So, yeah. So, of course, Superman can't turn down helping anyone, but yeah, he agrees to help them out, and they decide, without even really asking him about it, they decide to send down this replacement to fill in for Superman while he's across the galaxy helping them out. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting about this story is that let's see, yeah, here it is, this panel here. Short-sighted people have often begged Superman to confiscate all the nuclear weapons on Earth, for example, to ensure world peace, without realizing that there is no way even a Superman could be 100% positive that he defused every bomb, every weapon, or prevent new warheads from being secretly produced. All it would take is just one detonation, perhaps in a major city, to turn worldwide disarmament into a nightmarish joke. Yeah, so what you can see there, hang on, I'm trying to line this up a little better. With the panel with the mushroom cloud going off in the background, and Superman can't believe that his plan failed. His plan to disarm the whole world. Too bad Christopher Reeve didn't read that comic. Maybe it might stop him from making Superman 4. Oh well. So that's an interesting cover. I wonder who the artist on that one is. I don't see it. There it is on it. So that says Cowan. I wonder if that's Dennis Cowan. That's Giordano inks. I kind of figured that would have been Dick Giordano inks, but it didn't look like his pencils. And there's another nice Eduardo Barreto cover. He was doing a lot of Superman covers around that time. Here we got an issue of Freedom Fighters. That's probably a random one that I picked up in a quarter bin. I don't have a whole lot of Freedom Fighters. And this is a great comic. This was called Dynamic Classics, and I don't believe that it got much further than this first issue. It might have just been this one first issue, but as you can see, it has Batman in it, my favorite character, and it's really nice Dick Giordano cover. And anybody who's familiar with Bronze Age Batman can already tell that this issue is going to reprint The Secret of the Waiting Graves, was you can see on the tombstone there, which was the first collaboration between Dennis O'Neil, Neil Adams, and Dick Giordano, and it was the storyline that really started like the Bronze Age of Batman, which is the Batman that I love. I mean, like the late Silver Age stuff had already had some Neil Adams illustrated stories in Brave and the Bold, and I believe that even Dennis O'Neil had written some Batman stories on their own on his own. But this is where Neil and Denny came together, and it was magic. And of course, you had Dick Giordano and the inks too. If I didn't have like both my hands full right now, I would do a chef's kiss. Like that's how great it is. Speaking of cool reprints, here's a Marvel Super Action with Squadron Sinister in it, aka Squadron Supreme, aka Discount Justice League. Here's a really cool Marvel Superheroes. That's a Hulk reprint, obviously. So here's a Tarzan, a couple of Tarzans. I know I got some other Tarzans in here too that I saw when I was just kind of flipping through it real quick earlier. But I'm going to set those aside. I want to make sure all my Tarzans are together. There's that Hulk comic again. And Legends of the DC Universe Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is an interesting story. It was written by Marv Wolfman, illustrated by Paul Ryan and Bob McLeod. And this is one where they go to like this kind of it's kind of a lost story that would have been in between Crisis, and they go to this universe where it's on one hand kind of a much more innocent Silver Age kind of universe, and also like a lot more ethnically diverse. Like their version of Superman is black, and their version of Green Arrow is a Native American, and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, it's tragically destroyed. There's another DC Legends of the DC Universe, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, and this is one that was done by Mark. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Mark Evanier, I'm guessing, and Steve Rude, and of course Mark Evanier, very talented, very prolific writer whose name I wish I knew I was pronouncing correctly. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but yeah, Steve Rude illustrations, gorgeous artwork. But Mark was an assistant to Jack Kirby throughout the 1970s, among other things, and a good friend of his. And so it's cool that he's doing like a Bronze Age Superman story. And here's an interesting cover. I really like this cover, which looks like it's Cyborg Superman fighting Black Adam, but it's actually not. I'll leave it at that. So Crimson, I don't think this is mine. I think that might be my roommate's who got mixed in accidentally. My ex-roommate, the guy I used to live with when I boxed all these comics up. Prey, that's one of my favorite Legends of the Dark Knight storylines. Here's another Tarzan. This looks like a Dark Horse miniseries of Return, like an adaptation of Return of Tarzan. Thomas Yates, very talented artist. I'll set that back down here with the rest of these Tarzans. Here's one that's upside down. That's a Power of Shazam. Oh yeah, here's the mother load of Tarzan, if you're interested in that. Oh, don't want to mess up that Batman comic. That should be bagged and boarded. I'm probably going to go through and try to bag and board as many of these as I can. But yeah, here's all my Bronze Age Tarzans. I'm pretty sure all my Bronze Age Tarzans are in here. Both the 70s runs from DC and Marvel. So yeah, Joe Kubert, my personal favorite artist of Tarzan. Awesome cover. And issue number 2, also an awesome cover, with the death of Kala. Very tragic. There's where he first meets Jane. So he adapted the novel into the first few issues of this. And then, of course, moved on to an adaptation of Return of Tarzan. So, which honestly I feel like is an odd one to adapt into a comic book, because the first part of the novel is a lot of Tarzan, pretending to be a Frenchman in Western society, and not very Tarzan-like. You can see these covers are very like he plays up the Tarzan type stuff as much as he can, but there's La of Opar. When you get into the second half, where he becomes friends with the Waziri tribe and discovers the lost city of Opar and La and all that kind of stuff. That's when the book starts to become a little more like what you traditionally think of a Tarzan book. But this miniseries here, even though it says two of three, I think that they pretty much just kind of summarize like the first half of the book or so in a couple of pages, and then get straight to him washing back up on the same coast that his parents were marooned on all those years ago, and where he was discovered by the apes and raised by Kala. So, and then eventually you get into like some original stories and Hubert telling his own original stories. And then when Marvel took over, John Buscema became the artist of Tarzan, and he also was like very talented and did a great job. He was always a guy who preferred like this more sort of action adventure stuff. He didn't really like superheroes, but he liked characters like Conan and he liked characters like Tarzan. So of course he was when they got the rights to Tarzan, and he was like one of their best artists, and he's like, oh hell yeah, I want to draw Tarzan. And then God, the first I think I've got like most of the first 11 issues. I think I'm missing a couple, but Tarzan Triumph, the soul searing conclusion of our epic adaptation of Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar. And they are not kidding. It is indeed an epic adaptation. Lasted for 11 issues, almost a year. Kind of makes you wonder why they didn't just pad it back out to 11, pad back out to 12, just to make sure they have all of them. All right, so that's the last one I think that I have bag and boarded in that group. And then we see that's issue number 18 there, and that's issue number 26. So the other two Tarzans I found were issues 20 and 21. So let's, while I'm at it, go ahead and put that in between there. Make sure that's nice and organized. And then this is a nice set of group books here. This would have come out around the time of Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, which is probably the best Tarzan movie, at least live action. You know, that Disney one, that was pretty fire. You know, I love the Disney Tarzan. That Phil Collins soundtrack, he did not need to go that hard, but he went that hard. But this adapts basically like the first half of the original Tarzan novel, which would have been the half that, was actually accurate in the movie Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes. Once Tarzan meets D'Arnot, that's when it starts to get a bit different from like the first half of that book or the first half of that movie. It's so accurate to the novel, and then the second half just goes off completely in its own direction and does its own thing. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still an awesome movie. It's definitely worth watching. But if you're watching it and you're getting into it being like, wow, this is just like the novel, just fair warning, it's going to get to the point where then it's not like the novel. Here's a couple of Superman adventures. Mark Miller wrote this book for a while, but neither one of those is Mark Miller issues. Apparently, from what I understand, the rumor is that Grant Morrison kind of ghost wrote some of those issues, which I believe because he's always written a good Superman. So it could be. There's a reprint of a Spider-Man comic that came with one of the early Marvel Legends figures. Here is the final issue of Batman Dark Victory, which was the sequel to Long Halloween, but I don't see any of the other issues in here. Got some JLA, some of the this was, I think, yeah, this is Mark Waid's run on JLA. Would have come right after Grant Morrison's run. So still pretty good though. There's a couple more Tarzans. That's from the Dark Horse Tarzan series. Got this was a story where he fought the Phantom of the Opera, and here was a team up with John Carter. Brett Blevins was the artist on this, and his artwork was gorgeous. And he draws these really nice women with kind of like these very, I don't want to sound too much like a pervert here, but I mean, I am a pervert, but I don't want to sound like a pervert. Yeah, he had a tendency to draw women with these nice supple bodies that, like, to me look very realistic. like not necessarily realistic in that that's how people are shaped in real life, but they had like a certain amount of gravity to them that I really liked, especially because a lot of artists in the 90s that drew women tend to draw them like kind of defying gravity, if you know what I mean. So this was a really cool series by Larry Hama around the same time that he was working on G.I. Joe. And you can see it's called Nth Man, the Ultimate Ninja. And this guy here is a badass motherfucker. Don't know what his real name is. Goes by the name of John Doe. And I have a theory about this. And my theory is that John Doe is actually well, first of all, let me say that this is a story that takes place in a parallel universe that's right on the cusp of World War III, like total nuclear war with the Soviet Union. And my theory about Mr. John Doe here is that he is actually a parallel universe counterpart to G.I. Joe's own Snake Eyes. And who knows? Maybe she's the counterpart to the Baron. It's possible. I don't know. Whatever in that universe. So, I've met Larry Hama quite a few times. He's a really cool guy. I've been tempted to ask him about this, but I'm kind of afraid of the answer because if he says no, that's a bunch of nonsense. Well, that just ruins my enjoyment of that particular fan theory. And if he says, "Oh yeah, that's totally it," well, then that just destroyed the mystery for me, didn't it? So I just kind of want to let it remain a mystery. I don't want to really ask him about it. So, but that's my theory about that. So here's another upside down one, and that's the Umbrella Academy. And I think I borrowed that from somebody who I used to be friends with. Uh, but they decided they didn't want to be friends with me anymore. So I guess those are my comics now. Got a few Umbrella Academies in there. What else do we have? Another upside down comic, and that is Hawkman. That's a Hawkman special. Tony Isabella, Howell, and Randall. All new excitement in the land of the dead and beyond. Because he's a dude who reincarnates. I don't think he was really that famous for it yet at that point in the Bronze Age, but he later would be. So that's pretty much everything in that random box of comics, and it took me like over a half an hour to talk about all of that. So let me stand up, try to do that without making any old man noises. My knees. So I guess I failed. I wound up making some old man noises after all. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that box of comics. Like I said, I wasn't really paying too much attention to it when I grabbed it as to what comics would have been in there. And I started to kind of go through there a little bit, and I just kind of flipped through it real quick, and I saw a lot of cool stuff in there, and I figured, you know what, I'll gotta make a video about it real quick, so I think that'll be fun. So if this is just a random video that you found on the internet where it's like, oh, hey, this guy's talking about comics, I'll listen to him talk about comics for a little bit. Normally, I do a lot of action figure unboxings and things like that. I'm in my kitchen right now because that's just where I set down that box. I haven't found a permanent place to do it right now, but usually I do my videos in my living room and I unbox action figures, and I might wind up expanding and doing some other things shortly. I've got some ideas for other things I want to talk about. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more content from me, make sure you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. If you want to participate in a live stream, what you need to do is hit that little bell. It's over here. Hit the little bell, and that'll notify you anytime I'm going online and warn you that I'm about to start a live stream. So if you want to come on and chat with me, that's cool. Whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.